Hi everyone and welcome to The Crows Show, brought to you by Foodland. I'm Mark Bickley.
And I'm Alana Smith. And Mark, the weeks are really flying by, aren't they? Already a quarter of the season is behind us as we strive to achieve a finals berth in 2018.
Coming up in today's show, Bryce Gibbs gives his first impressions of the Crows and he really likes the look of two youngsters.
And the one skill that hasn't improved.
But first, a US basketball coach once said that effective teamwork begins and ends with communication. Of course, the same applies to football, and right now, Crows players are being studied to determine how well they communicate with each other. With the help of a language specialist from UniSA, the club wants to ensure on-field talk is as efficient as possible. Josh Jenkins and Elliot Himmelberg are two of those taking part in the trial.
Go lock! Go lock! Need you more vocal.
Communication, absolutely critical. Obviously, particularly for our younger players, doesn't always come naturally. So one of the things that we really try to reinforce is understand the game plan, but then start communicating to your teammates. Really critical. So basically, this is the contrast between yourself and Jage. Your communication really strong in the structure setups.
Benny up.
Organising Benny, getting the structure right. So obviously the same scenario with JJ, setting up a structure, but just listen to the contrast after.
Resting mid up high. In line with me, mate.
So a little bit more demanding, and then after the play, when the play starts to unfold, have a listen to JJ's voice.
Got to be able to affect the next kick. That's it. Got all that space as well. Come on, Lockie, come on! Get out there!
So the involvement of UniSA is really positive. Obviously they've got some experts in this field and they're able to sort of relay the types of communication that are more effective out on field, and we've been able to utilise them, and David's been really helpful in making that happen.
From our perspective, we're bringing together methods from linguistics and sports analytics, and fundamentally we're interested in three things. Are the players communicating? How often are they speaking on the field? What are they saying? And then how are they saying that as well?
Come on, up higher. Come!
The blue part of this pie chart, more than 60% actually, is Josh Jenkins commanding and clearly instructing. If we compare this to one of the less experienced players, their pie chart of the way they use language is a lot more mixed, and in particular the experienced players expressed a lot more instructional language. They asked fewer questions, they were much more certain and clear. There was even less repetition. They'd say it once, maybe twice, whereas some of the less experienced players were repeating a name multiple times.
How far into your career do you feel like you started to develop that?
It takes a while, definitely. You learn eventually that it actually helps you get the ball. Like a lot of times, you know, particularly with what we just saw, the ball's moving on the open side. If you're telling the guy who's about to receive the ball what's going to happen or where you are, say swing on your left, before he even gets it, gives that person so much confidence they're just going to do it.
Benny, stay! Don't come out here. You've got to be looking around and talking, mate.
One player who's come to the Crows as a proven leader is Bryce Gibbs. The former Carlton star has slotted seamlessly into Adelaide's midfield with standout performances so far this year. But he faced a different test this week, coming up against his former teammates for the first time. In this chat, brought to you by Revolution Roofing, Gibbs reflects on his move home.
Meet a very happy man. Happy with the Crows.
Everyone has great belief in where they're going and what they want to achieve.
Happy with his form.
I certainly think help this footy team achieve what we want, and that's that premiership.
And happy being home.
Just how easy it is, a bit more slow paced, a bit more relaxing sort of lifestyle.
And no doubt the feeling among fans is mutual.
Jenkins was very quick to get it to Gibbs. Gibbs right foot snap, knows the ground well. And Eddie gives it off, gave it off and going, and Gibbs has kicked the goal.
For all the upside, Gibbs admits leaving Carlton was the hardest decision he's ever made.
To leave a place which I genuinely love, 200 games and life member of that footy club, who pretty much became my second family when I moved over there at 17, was sad to say goodbye to a lot of them.
But he's now enjoying the experience of success.
We can achieve anything, I think. I've certainly noticed a motivation and hunger within the group that they want to go one better. Although I don't carry the mental scars of last year, I've certainly enjoyed trying to help with my experiences.
So, who's grabbed his attention so far?
Certainly guys like Matty Crouch really impressed me. The ability to find the ball, it's unbelievable. Another kid in Wayne Mulier has probably caught my eye as well. Just really smooth, silky operator, and he certainly impressed me.
So, when he calls time on his career, how would he like to be remembered?
Just someone that was reliable and someone that had a crack.
Loads up, goes for home!
No doubt about that, he is an absolute star. Now, I heard during the week that goal kicking accuracy this season is the worst in 20 years and that it's been declining every year for the past 10 years. Mark, what's happening to the kicks that count?
Yeah, look, it's an interesting stat, isn't it? When you look at that, you think, wow, how can that be? But there's a number of factors, I believe, and one is the congestion that's now in the defensive area. So back 20 years ago, there was always space for players to lead into, and predominantly right directly in front of goal. So a lot of the shots were marked and taken from really high percentage areas. Now that space is being filled up, players are being forced to lead wide. And if they do take a mark, they're taking shots which are a far less percentage. So that's one part of it. No doubt the forwards work a lot harder than what they did in the past, so fatigue comes into it as well. So yeah, they're just a couple of things, but hard to make excuses for set shots 20 or 30 metres out, and we've seen some of them being missed recently.
All right, so in practical terms then, what can be done to improve this?
Well, a little bit is about game style. So you're hoping that if you can move the ball quickly before all the numbers get back there, you get one-on-ones and those players can mark it in some better spots. And two, it just comes down to investing some time and energy into making sure the forwards have really solid goal kicking routines. They know exactly what makes it work for them, and there's no doubt there's a mental element in that as well. So you've got to really look forward to having the ball in your hands and having that set shot as opposed to having it and thinking, I hope I don't miss.
All right, if you had to put your house on someone, who would it be?
From Adelaide, I'm going with Tom Lynch. I reckon about 35 to 40 metres out. That's his sweet spot. He's got a good routine. He backs himself in, so Tommy Lynch for mine.
And what about your goal kicking? Is it best left unsaid?
Well, no, I wasn't bringing it up, and I'm hoping you weren't going to bring it up either. Thanks for that.
All right, do stay with us on The Crow Show. Coming up there with the birds and the stat that matters. Now, there's an old saying that you should never share the spotlight with a child because they'll always steal the show. Brodie Smith is finding that out this season as he sits down with some of the club's youngest supporters, all thanks to Thomas Farms.
Welcome to Junior Jam, brought to you by Thomas Farms. This week we've got Kobe. Welcome, Kobe.
Thank you.
First of all, I'm going to have to get you to stand up. Can you show the camera the back of your Guernsey? Yes, thanks, mate. Sit down. Miss you, Charlie. Age?
I am 9.
Play football?
Yes.
And who's your favourite player?
Roy Laird.
Wow, nice. Laird man, good start. Which leads to my next questions, hopefully you get this one right as well. Who's cooler, forwards or defenders?
Defenders.
Nice, and why is that?
Because they don't get recognised as much and they play a crucial part in the game trying to stop all the goals. You
are my man. Well done. And what do you like about Lairdy? Why is Lairdy your favourite player over me, obviously?
I both like you better, but if you come down to the stats, I reckon I'd like Lairdy better.
Lairdy is going to love you. If the Crows needed you this weekend, where would you play?
I do make a pretty good midfielder, so I'd probably play midfield.
Yep, so who would you take out? We've got Sloaney, Gibbsy and Matt Crouch in there. You need to take one out so you can play. I can take Matt out, it's pretty slow.
I reckon Matt.
Yeah, good. Good work. Right, thanks for joining us, mate.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And we'll have more about Smithers a little later. And don't forget to sign up as a Crows Junior member and enjoy all the great benefits. Simply go to 19thman.com.au. Now, last week in our High Flyers segment brought to you by Flight Centre, we recalled Ben Hart's Mark of the Year and mentioned that Brett Burton had been another winner of the award. So, to coincide with the Carlton game, we thought we'd rewind the clock to 2009 and have a look at the Birdman's big grab against the Blues.
They haven't had enough yet. Tip it. Burton! Oh! That's one of the marks of the century! Burton's back big time!
That is just what an unbelievable leap. He just jumped on top of the pack and then got the second leap.
You know, I remember coming out of full forward and Simon Goodwin was rolling down the wing, and as Goody always did, he always kicked long, so I knew it was going, and yeah, fortunate enough to get a ride on a couple of the ruckman's shoulders and got a bit of airtime. Goody was straight on to me straight after the game. He said that half that car's mine, but as it turned out, there wasn't a car involved that year because I think it was post GFC. The AFL were probably a bit tight on the wallet.
The crowd will enjoy the replay. He's jumped on the ruckman's shoulders, Tippett and Cruiser in front of them, and then got the lip. That is classic Birdman.
Well, I was actually quite small when I was younger, and so we would always through school, you know, being primary school and high school, play marks up at recess time and lunchtime. It was pretty much the done thing back then, and because I was small, I didn't have to stand at the front. You know, let the big blokes stand at the front, and I was able to get the run and jump, and so it developed from those years. Certainly, when I came into the AFL, Blighty was a big advocate for it. He he played that way, and so he was always of the opinion, take the ball at highest point. It suited me, and have a crack at it, so it certainly went from there. In my first year of footy, I took one at Waverley. It was one of our last games at Waverley in 1999. I remember getting kicked in long by it was David Gallagher at the time, and Brian Benke was he was unfortunately the one that was I used as a step ladder that day. So yeah, that was probably one of the highlights as well.
Tony Modra fans, be patient. We certainly haven't forgotten his spectacular feats. Well, when Mark returns after the break, we'll highlight the importance of line breakers and why social media is a blessing and a curse.
As we know, football is drowning in statistics. Fantasy players follow every kick, handball and mark. But there's one statistic that doesn't count, and it's one that all coaches value highly. Metres gained is a measure of the distance that a player gains by foot, by hand or by running with the ball. Those who excel in this area are often called line breakers, and they're vital to fast and efficient ball movement.
He has covered more metres with the football than anyone else in the competition this year, over 600 metres a game.
Metres gained stat is essentially from the time you get the ball, how far you advance it. So whether that's an individual player, so if I handball the ball to you, the distance that goes, that counts as metres gained for an individual. And the same from a team perspective, the metres gained that you get in a possession chain. So I guess depending on your game style, field position teams generally use that as a gauge to see whether they're getting more yardage than their opposition. A good one would be Andrew Gaff from West Coast. Clearly with his running power and the way he kicks and overlaps with handball receive, he generates a lot of forward ball movement and gets a lot of power for West Coast. So he would be one that you'd look at. It's not always a go-to, but it's another indicator that we'll use game day. I guess at the end of the day, it's what you value, as a coaching group and as a team, and how your game plan stacks up are the important stats. So I don't think there's a clear 3 or 4 that you need to. It really depends on your game style and what you think suits you.
Last year, no one at the Crows was better than Brodie Smith when it came to metres gained. But of course, he's sidelined this season as he recovers from a knee reconstruction. Fortunately, he's progressing quite well and has started to join in some drills with his teammates. While the club hasn't put an official timeline on his return, Smithers is quietly confident he'll be back playing later this season. We certainly hope so. Now, it goes without saying that social media is essential to the lives of most people. But while it's a great way to be informed and for fans to feel engaged, there can be serious negative impacts on a player's state of mind. In this regular segment brought to you by Breakthrough Mental Health Foundation, we examine the issues faced by sports people.
Nick
Nixon. Who's that one?
Social media is massive these days for the playing group. It's a great platform for us to be able to connect with the fans. While we take the positives, there's also going to be some pretty big negatives that accompany social media.
There's been quite a bit of research coming out just the last couple of years looking at that connection between social media and well-being in young people. And what it's finding in quite large studies is that the more people use social media, the more they're depressed, more anxious and lower levels of life satisfaction.
You jump online and you open yourself up to a whole new world of criticism, and it is hard at times to turn away from that and not engage with that.
That's why it's good that there's this partnership between Flinders University Breakthrough and the Crows, because we need more research in this area to fully understand how social media works well, when it works badly, and who's most vulnerable.
The players are educated really well when they get in the club of the do's and don'ts and the general direction in how to use social media positively for the self and for the footy club as well.
People need to be quite critical consumers of social media, and that's setting limits on it. There's times where it needs to be put away, where it's time to focus on performance and on changing old patterns and learning new ways of doing things.
I can tell you it's a huge issue for the clubs, and there are some Crows players who simply refuse to use Twitter. OK, still to come after the break, why it pays to be seen at the footy and some wishful thinking from a few of the fans.
I'm sure we've all fantasised about seeing former Crows stars return for one last time, just to see how they'd go in today's game. So, who would you choose?
Yeah, no, Mark Rashuto for sure. Probably the Birdman, eh? Bring him back, bring some big catches back.
Rashuto? Probably the Roo. Mark Rashuto. Godra.
I would bring Mark Rashuto.
I think Tony Modra.
Oh, I tell you, mate, you've got to bring back Mark Rashuto.
Rue's certainly a popular choice. I think I'd have to go with my co-host, wouldn't I? Well, staying with fans, it's time to go looking for our face in the crowd. Who will it be this week? I think we should give it to you. If you recognise yourself, contact the club by 5 p.m. Wednesday. Be ready with some photo ID and a merchandise pack will be yours, courtesy of Toyota.
As we wrap up today's show, a reminder to visit the club website afc.com.au for all the latest news and exclusive stories.
And don't forget Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. Next week we'll chat to Wayne Millerer, the young man in hot form who, as we heard earlier, has caught the eye of Bryce Gibbs.
Thanks for your company, and with the support of Foodland, we look forward to joining you again next Sunday on 7. See you then.
Bye for now.